You've probably heard of the Rua, Zimbabwe aerial elementary case, where a UFO hovered next to the playground, basically landed. ETs came out, at least 60 plus students saw it. A smaller amount saw the ETs, but some communicated with them. Very well verified. Turns out there was an adult or two who saw it as well. There's another case, Westall High School case in Australia, where UFOs did land next to the playground. It's almost exactly the same, except it was a high school. Then I started thinking, didn't that happen in Broadhaven, Wales? I had to look that one up because I only had a vague memory of it. Same darn thing. And then I remembered Florida, Crestview Elementary School. Very well verified, lots of witnesses. Same darn thing. So I started digging deeper. I'm like, oh, it was the Hillsdale case. Michigan, Hillsdale College. UFOs actually landed next to the college. They were there for 2 hours. 80 plus students saw it, faculty. The police saw it. So I started digging deep into these, and finding out about the schoolyard encounters was absolutely something that changed my perspective on things.
Welcome back to Far Out with Faust. Today we are taking a profound journey into the UFO phenomenon, the vast government cover-up, and the evolution of human consciousness with legendary researcher, investigator, and author Preston Dennett. With 4 decades of experience documenting extraterrestrial encounters across the globe, Preston joins us to tackle the military-industrial complex's desperate attempts to control the narrative being put out right now. We specifically debunk the recent fear-mongering political spin that attempts to identify all extraterrestrials as demonic entities. Preston shatters this absurdity by pointing to his extensive research into well over 300 verified cases where individuals were miraculously healed during UFO encounters, proving these visitors are very, very far from malevolent. We also dive deep into some of the most fascinating and suppressed patterns in UFO history, including Preston's groundbreaking discovery and research into hundreds of intentional schoolyard encounters, as well as targeted displays at places like drive-in movie theaters. Beyond the physical sightings, we discuss the consistent, urgent telepathic messages that these beings are delivering to humanity. Shut down your nuclear weapons. Stop destroying your environment. End the endless cycles of war and greed. Finally, we shift naturally from the skies to the spiritual realm as Preston shares his incredible insights into astral projection as a conscious practice. Having authored the book Out of Body Exploring, A Beginner's Approach to Astral Projection, he explains how absolutely anyone can consciously learn to leave their physical body to conquer the fear of death that the parasite ruling class needs and uses to keep humanity in check. So strap in, keep your minds and hearts open, and welcome Preston to the show. Preston, my brother, welcome to the show. Thank you for beaming in.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Man, so much going on right now in the world today, and people are just, they don't know what to believe. They have a healthy distrust of everything the government could possibly say and do, which I have to agree with. But, you know, Trump recently released a new set of so-called evidence documents, right? And Congress is about to hold another UAP hearing in June, right? And then we have Spielberg's movie, Disclosure Day, set to premiere, I think in 3 days. So let me ask you, how desperate is the United States military-industrial complex to finagle and control this narrative about disclosure?
I think it's one of their top priorities, honestly. I think this is where a lot of the black budget goes towards the subject of UFOs and controlling the narrative and keeping a clamp down on the cover-up. Because, yeah, we have some documents released and some fuzzy footage, but that's not disclosure, not even close. I think it's more steering the narrative, and they've kind of painted themselves into a corner. I have little sympathy for them, honestly, because they've lied from day one. That's the policy they adopted. And turning that ship around is, of course, difficult to do. But let's face it, the cover-up has been a disaster. It's leaking like a sieve. And now they're at the point where they've kind of shot themselves in the foot because there's so much evidence. There are so many UFO researchers, so many people who've had UFO sightings and encounters. that they are being forced. This is kind of my assessment. They're being forced to play their hand and say, because if they don't disclose, at least to some degree, they're going to look like fools, completely irrelevant, not credible. And that's exactly where they are. So I think most people agree that our government is lying about this, is covering up quite a bit of information. And yeah, like I said, that's their own darn fault. They've mishandled this subject from the beginning. They've really bungled it up badly. And yeah, I think this is part of their attempts to steer the narrative.
Absolutely. What do you think of the whole, seems to be kind of a, what do they call it in football when you call an alternate, the alternate play that seems to be quasi-religious, certainly full spectrum fear, that they're kind of having people, you had J.D. Vance a couple weeks ago. He went from saying, when he was on the campaign trail that he was very interested in disclosure, he thinks the American people have a right to know, to they asked him about it. And I think his response was something absurd, like, have you read your Bible? I was like, what? Like, who told this man to say this? Like, and why are they switching trying to inject this fear-mongering religious narrative into it now? Like, what is the plan, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he basically said flat out, he thinks they're demonic.
Yeah.
Which, this is something I've dealt with for quite a long time, because this is a school of thought that, a good segment of the population subscribes to, that the UFO phenomena is demonic, that these are not ETs, but a spiritual phenomena. So I actually did my research on this. I've investigated the paranormal in depth, ghosts, angels, demons. I did a lot of investigations into demonic hauntings. So I can tell you with pretty good authority that they are completely separate.
Yes.
Demons don't fly spaceships.
I know, man.
It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
You can't reverse engineer a demonic spacecraft.
Man,
and that could just go on, because the people are taken on board a craft.
Yeah,
they're physically examined. They're sometimes implanted. We've got implant removal cases. I wrote a book about healing cases. People healed as a result of a UFO encounter. And it's not just a couple of cases.
No.
I've documented well over 300, and it's easily twice that.
Wow.
Because I just keep getting cases. It's insane. Demons don't heal people, is my point.
No,
I mean, there's just reason after reason after reason that this could not be that. So to steer that narrative in that direction is absurd, not supported by the actual facts, and
not at all.
Really makes me wonder what the heck they're trying to pull over on us.
Maybe not us, like me and you, but the general public, which has fallen into a very much of it, not a lot, not all of it, but there's a very fundamentalist kind of this wave that's spreading among, I don't know if I want to say Catholics, but among Christians in general, that is like, don't be fooled, don't be deceived. This is the devil. I'm like, healing encounters, using the CE5 protocols. I know people who have had incredible experiences. I'm like, so they were talking to a demon, and then the man's hearing returned after 35 years of being almost completely deaf. Like, that sounds real demonic. Like, what are you talking about? And I've also done a lot of research. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Conjuring. Great movie as far as horror movies go. Scary movie. But I was one of the people who brought that property to New Line Cinema, and of course, we had 10 different cases, and I was knee deep in research of all things demonology and Ed and Lorraine Warren, and you can quickly ascertain that these things are not related, and if they're being related specifically by someone who wants you to associate one with the other, so you can be very afraid. And I just I have to just shake my head and try not to laugh too loud when I hear people making these ridiculous claims, like all aliens are fake, they're just demons. And I'm like, it's a big, broad universe with a wide spectrum. Don't you think maybe that there is room for all of these things? That, why is it humans always want to be like, no, it's black or it's white? I'm like, what?
It's mind-boggling to me that people actually subscribe to this theory, because if you do just a little bit of research, I think it falls apart. And some of the things I always tell people, well, okay, let's say demons are real. I think they are. I think there's good evidence of this. But you're saying that every living being beyond Earth is demonic. But here on Earth, we're not. We're the good ones. We're the angels. And let's remember that only 1/3, supposedly, of the angels fell. So that leaves 2/3 of them out there who are angelic. So it would be far, far more likely, twice as likely, that they would be angelic in nature rather than demonic.
That's a great point. I never even thought to propose it that way to people who subscribe
They don't buy
to this.
it. That doesn't make a dent in their belief system, because this is faith-based thinking, not
That's right.
evidence-based
Dogma.
thinking. So you really can't pierce that armor in any real effective way, because they've essentially already made up their minds about it, because it's not objective, it's not scientific thinking. There's no way to get past that wall. So it's frustrating. I've debated some of these folks, and it's very hard to make headway with them.
It is. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, I was like, how big of a skeptic are you? You one of these people who believes like that ETs aren't real? He's like, no, I believe they're real. I just believe that they're demons. And I was like, what? I was like, okay, so I read a book a couple years ago. It was written by a human who was channeling an ET who claimed to be from the constellation of Arcturus, or I think that's the name of the constellation. Or I was like, and the whole book talks about how great Jesus is. So, what kind of a demon sends its spirit through a human to write a book praising Jesus for 450 pages, and talking about how Yeshua, we call him Yeshua here, but on their planet they called him this, and on other planets he's known because he incarnates onto planets to help people spiritually evolve and understand who and what they are. And I was like, why would any, and he was like, wow, really? I was like, yeah, I swear, I'm like, look, I can't tell you, obviously, if this person who said they channeled this ET really did or not. There's no way to know that, but I know that, they certainly believe that. And this is the information that was provided. It doesn't sound very evil or demonic to me. In fact, it sounds spiritual and religious in a way that most faiths don't even bother to talk about. They're too busy instilling fear. Anyway, I just thought it was a relevant side note story to tell.
I've interviewed a lot of people who were deeply religious and had a real hard time dealing with their encounters because of that. And on the opposite spectrum, those who are profoundly atheistic had an equally difficult time because it's profoundly, how would I put it, belief shattering. It shatters your worldview, no matter where you are on this spectrum of religious belief. So it's interesting to see how it affects people. Almost everyone looks at these things through the lens of their own belief system, and it causes a big readjustment in that regard.
Mm-hmm. It's obviously a paradigm shift, and when your identity is wrapped up very much in your religious beliefs, that's a hard one to traverse. It's like I get it, but traverse it. We're going to, I think, one way or the other. So it's going to be a fun ride. But
a lot of people have no choice because they're dealing with it.
Right. You've chronicled thousands of encounters across hundreds of years, dozens of countries. I mean, like every kind of person. And, the one thing that they all have in common, what would you say is that one thing? Is there one thing?
In terms of ETs, yeah, I would say probably the single most common factor is that we're dealing with humanoids. People very much like us. Because as a skeptic coming into this field, I didn't believe any of it. because I kept hearing these accounts peripherally, and it sounded very much like Star Trek to me, where I was expecting ETs to look much more like the Blob or,
Mm.
tentacles or something just really different from us. And that was, of course, pure speculation based on my own beliefs of what
Mm.
ETs would look like. But what we're seeing is the humanoid form appears to be the universal template. So, yeah, we get grays, we get human looking ETs, mantids, reptilians, tall whites, short
Hmm.
little blue beings, really all different types, but they're all essentially humanoid with, a head, two
Sure.
eyes.
I mean, they're bipedal, you know.
Yep.
They have arms and legs, like we do, and then kind of the rest can vary depending on, I think, their dominant set of genetics. But that's amazing. I like, and then it makes me look at the planet, and when I see a bird or I see a cat, I just think, wow, there's no doubt in my mind that somewhere out there in the 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 great unknown, the vast beyond, there's a planet where the feline was allowed to evolve into sentience, and they have their own. Like, I would love to peek in on how they're doing it, how like, how cool is it to be kind of a humanoid with a feline as the dominant
There are reports
trait.
of that, by the way.
Yeah.
I put them on the back burner at first until I got enough to say, okay, there are enough reports where we can say there's something to this. Dog-like
Mm,
beings,
yeah.
absolutely. And I've talked to first-hand witnesses who've seen these guys. So, yeah, it's so interesting. Another commonality is I think almost all ETs will communicate telepathically. So that's very, very much consistent. I think it's also very consistent that their technology blows ours out of the water. So,
You could say that again. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Um, Telepathy, and what's fascinating is, with the recent telepathy tapes that have come forward and a lot of the science that has gone into really examining the possibility and for all intents and purposes validating that these autistic nonverbal children are communicating telepathically with their mother and vice versa. And like, they're doing all these rigorous tests, but it shows you that we have this ability. It is latent, but in these kids who don't have really any other option, it manifests itself. So I think we have those genes. I think that they're inherent. I think when we're ready, when we're ready to be a little more transparent with each other, they will manifest in everyone. We'll see.
well, telepathy has been proven repeatedly in a laboratory setting. I think most people, if you ask them, can relate at least a couple of accounts where, like, they knew who was going to be on the phone, or this or that
Hmm.
was going to happen, or they've kind of read a person's mind. So this is absolutely, I think, a natural human talent. When you look at the contactee accounts, of course, they're communicating telepathically with the ETs, and they come away from that experience and they continue to experience some telepathy. So you have a lot of contactees who are no other way to put it, psychic.
Hmm.
It's a very consistent feature of contactees. They
It is, isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? People, widespread reports. It's one of the most consistent things, I think. Like, after that interaction, their psychic abilities and their intuition came online in a way that they hadn't experienced before. They had this interaction, this dream, this abduction experience. Some people say that, well, I don't, I was there, but I don't think I was there with my body. Other people say I was there even with my body, which is, and that's the minority of the reports. But I still, there's some people you listen to and you can discern that at bare minimum, they are sincere. They believe everything they are saying. There's nothing that they're saying that is coming from a place of, like, you know, like who comes to mind? What's his name? An Andromeda who claims to have physically been taken off world for a while. He's kind of become a bit of a recluse, but when he first came out and was telling his story, he was really, it was really incredible because they had him off planet allegedly for months, and they were giving him the history of the planet and of our interactions with other species, and talking about, previous civilizations and previous versions of human, and what we were made of. Alex Collier. Have you ever heard of him?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He used to. He's had some incredible experiences. Like, he's someone who especially when he first started talking about it, he was just so sincere. I just believed him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe everyone who says that they were taken off planet, obviously, but some people say it and they have so much to say in so much detail, and you're just like, wow, and it's so fascinating. I don't know. What do you think of Alex? I would love to talk to him, but he doesn't really talk to anyone anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with everything that he says, but to me, I think the best evidence we have that these kinds of events are taking place are the huge number of people who are reporting this. It's not just one or two or 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000. It's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Really good indications. It's in the millions. So I think we really have to take these stories seriously because they're incredibly consistent. I mean, we know what to expect when someone's taken on board a craft. There's a very basic outline of events, and people are getting the same messages from all the ETs. We're seeing the same tools. They're describing the interior of the craft the same way. So there's little doubt in my mind that this is real. And having talked to so many people, they're very reluctant at first to speak. They become very emotional. They often will start with some caveat like, I don't have a mental illness. There's no history of mental illness in my family.
I'm not crazy.
Got a good education. Got a good job. I don't do drugs. I haven't told my family. I haven't told anybody this.
Wow.
Please don't use my name. So people tell me, oh, they're just trying to get attention. I'm like, no, they're not.
They're grifters. Like, grifters. Like, we live in a society where if you come forward with something like this and people want to make sure that you get a full mental diagnostic, maybe spend some time in an institution. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how brainwashed society is. And that's the government is responsible for that kind of decades-long campaign.
They've gaslit people from day one. I've actually interviewed people who were put in a mental institution by their family, even though they had outside witnesses to support their story. Family did not want to hear it. And
damn, that's
rarely
wild,
happens.
Man.
People, you have to be really careful.
Yeah,
it's much better now, I will say. This subject has gained quite a bit of legitimacy. But even our governments, while they're talking about UFO sightings and crash retrievals even, and ET bodies, aren't talking about contactees. Not a word. And the silence is deafening. Because for some reason they're not touching that subject.
No, and I think you and I both know why. Which is a huge confession. And I wonder, we live in this new phase of society. I don't know when it happened, but politicians no longer feel that even if they lie, even if they get caught lying, even if we find out they knew they were lying, which they almost always do, they don't need to explain themselves. They don't need to apologize. They don't need to do anything. They can just spit out whatever it is they want you to believe right now in this moment. So I'm wondering, if at some point the United States government is going to come forward and talk about the interactions and the deals that they have done with these races, that started with Eisenhower, because there's a lot of evidence to that details those interactions. I'm a big fan of William Cooper. He was a intelligence analyst with the highest clearance possible while he was active, and then when he retired, he started a civilian intelligence agency, largest one ever, allowed to manifest, and eventually they took him out. But he talks about he read all the reports. He was like, it was part of my job. I had access to everything. This was in the early 50s. And he talks about the 3 meetings, the 3 places they met, which 3 beings, what was talked about. Of course, we told the spiritual ones who who offered us, free energy and spiritual guidance in exchange that we lead the world in disarming the atomic weapons programs that had been popping up since Hiroshima. And of course, America was like, no, we're not interested in anything. But then another group came about and they said, we'll offer you some technology. And all we want to do is have the ability to quietly, and no one's going to remember this, abduct some of your population because we want to do some testing and it's for our own benefit. No one will be harmed. No one will be taken for good, and you'll get all this technology. And the government was like, "That sounds like a great deal."
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, honestly.
Did you hear about that one I was talking about, or do you think that it's just yeah?
Of course, we all know about William Cooper. His book, "Behold a Pale Horse," still tops the bestseller lists.
It's amazing. It's a great book.
It's just packed with information, and I consider him one of the really first whistleblowers out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised that he's no longer with us. I did look deeply into the Eisenhower meeting of 1954, I believe it was, February. Yeah. No doubt, in my mind, certainly that it's taken place. And there's a lot of researchers who have looked into it. Pretty much all of them come away like, oh yeah, it looks like this did happen.
Mm-hmm.
As the number of witnesses continues to grow, the amount of information about that case continues to grow as well. It's being more and more confirmed. Something did happen, and I think you mentioned just the basic outline of it was that, they came down and said, no more nukes, you're crazy, you're going to destroy yourselves. And we're like, no, we're not going to get rid of our nukes.
We can't because of Russia. Like what?
Well, it's the military-industrial complex who's in control of this.
Exactly.
It's not the president. We think of the government as being, the executive and legislative and judicial branch who's controlling the country. That's not who's controlling the country. It's the military-industrial complex. It's the intelligence agencies. It's the highest levels of the military who are not elected officials.
Nope.
So those guys are the ones who are behind the cover-up. And
the money that put them in place, period. The families and the monies that put them in place. Those are the ones who stand the most to lose, and who are making sure that this is in my opinion, the best kept secret, the most guarded of all secrets, because what would happen to their monopolies and their false scarcity fossil fuel bullshit if these technologies came to bear even the smallest fruit? It would be the end.
Yeah, that's exactly the force behind the cover-up right there. It's, the energy industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the banking industry, the insurance industry. These are the folks who are responsible for it, because there's no way they will ever. You know how much money the pharmaceutical industry makes every year? It's billions.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And so, we have these, quote, richest people in the world. They're the stooges.
Right.
Of the cabal.
They're the gophers.
So we have no idea how much. I mean, they can print their own money. Let's face it. The Federal Reserve System is a private corporation. Corporate personhood. We're in such a deep hole that I don't think there's any way out of it. So I don't think we'll ever see disclosure. Because to me, the end game of disclosure is show us the Roswell craft, show us the bodies. Yeah. We want full truth and transparency. And they have yet to even admit that Roswell happened.
I know.
They won't even admit to the Capitol flyover, 1952. Or the Malmstrom incident, remember that one, 1967?
Yeah.
Shut up. They were asked, the heads of the Defense Department, what were their names? Daley and Moultrie. What about Malmstrom? And we don't know about that. We've got no reporting on that. I'm like, wait, aren't you the head of defense? Isn't it like intercontinental nuclear tipped missiles and you don't know about this? Massively
witnessed. So many reports, all buried, and they're going to feign ignorance about it. The 1950, what year was the flyover? 52?
Yep, Capitol flyover.
Capitol flyover. I mean, a lot of people saw it. A lot of people. They didn't come and just like, they were there for a while. There was a very strong message being sent. And I go back and forth in my research and with my people about, was that the German breakaway society muscle flexing to get the government to realize that, listen, if you want to push this, we can call it game, set, match very, very, very quickly. So, you can come on board, but you cannot be in charge. You're not going to be able to call the shots. I always go back and forth whether that flyover was
Yeah, I've
part
heard
of the.
that theory.
What do you
I
think?
don't subscribe to it.
Okay.
Because I think they're all in cahoots, honestly. The Russians, the Germans, China, Japan, France, Canada, U.S., all the major superpowers at the very highest levels are in complete cooperation with all of this. So I don't think that it's an
But were they? But they weren't. When was the Polar Treaty signed? Was it 50? Was it? I think that's when they kind of made the partnership official. But the secret space program has been these countries, which you just listed, for decades and decades. They've been in cahoots together, and which is almost comforting that at the highest level there's cooperation. But then again, nobody knows that, and it's all compartmentalized, and Russia still is, trying to be provoked into a war with NATO. I mean, they're still trying for World War III. These same people who are controlling this secret are the ones causing everything that's happening in Iran and Middle East.
They want the wars. I mean, face it, the weapons companies are selling weapons to both sides. I mean, come on.
Yep. And I tell my kids, I'm like, so if you and your family make the most money you have ever made when countries go to war, and I'm not talking about a little bit of money, I'm talking about like more money than most countries ever even get, would you use your resources to make sure that nation states stay agitated and eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later, get into an armed conflict? Or would you just sit around and wait for them to have an argument and hope that maybe, because it'll be good for business, they'll go to war against each other? I say, and they look at me, they're like, the first one. I'm like, yeah, no shit. And when I have time, I'm going to take you through every single war, major conflict this country has been in, with the sole exception maybe being the revolution, and show you how the parties were manipulated by these same people who hold this same secret. It's there. It's all there.
Yeah, and this is the message that contactees get over and over again when they're taken on board. The greed and the corruption and the wars and aggression are choking your forward progress. We'll never have open official contact until we grow up a little bit. And I don't know that we are going to.
Yeah. So, we're talking about these messages that are being delivered, and many of them come in warnings. What would you say the top three of them in order are?
Number one, hands down, I don't care if it's grays or mantids or what have you, is warnings against the use of nuclear material, really in any capacity, but nuclear power, nuclear weapons, all of it. Exploding nuclear bombs. And some people get really in-depth information on this. Apparently, when we explode a nuclear bomb, it's not only causing permanent damage to wherever it's exploded, it's going into other dimensions.
Multidimensional, yeah.
That we're not even aware of. So
that is consistent. That is shockingly consistent.
Yep. That's the number one. I would say number two is probably environmental. Stop the pollution. Stop the chopping down of the forests. Stop the destruction of the environment. That's absolutely very, very consistent. And beyond that, I would say number three is probably what I mentioned earlier: war, aggression, greed, and corruption. Basically that we're heading towards a complete social collapse because we are so far gone in terms of morals and ethics and the hatred and divisiveness and really the corruption. So I can see why they would give this message, because from their perspective, looking down on us scrabbling around and killing each other, it's absurd.
So embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, but at the same time, it's like our whole belief system has been structured so that people can imagine that this is just the way it is, and part of the secrecy is about not letting people realize that there's a much better and different way to live, that this place that we call Earth has everything that anyone could want and more than enough for everyone. And with all our technology, we haven't even figured out how to give everyone electricity. We have billion people who don't even have a toilet that flushes. I mean, or running water, and no, but if you're working and prices keep rising, I live in America. I'm pretty sure you live in America, right? You're not Canadian. And even if you were, the life, it's a similar, it's not like, we're not talking about like Ethiopia or where there's many more challenges just to physically keeping yourself alive in your environment, but you have to pay your bills, your taxes, you have to pay rent, you have to pay for food.
Wage slaves, essentially. Yeah.
And that's it. So what kind of time do you have to be pondering these things when you're not sure if you're going to be able to make your mortgage payment? And that's the way the system is set up. So the question becomes, how in God's name do we wake enough people up to remind them that this experiment is being created by all of us, and we get to decide how it's structured and how we want to live? Not any government, not any NGO or even an elected representative. We have to come together and reclaim our sovereignty. And that, the warnings that we get are one reflection after the next of that simple fact. If only people would wake up to it.
I love what you're saying. You really hit upon it. I think the other driving force behind the UFO cover-up, which is that there are other people out there who are living in a much better way. And that's the last thing our overlords here on Earth want us to know about. And they will do anything, whether it's polluting our water with fluoride or polluting us with prescription drugs and illegal drugs. The whole drug war is a joke because they are funding it.
Yeah.
So that, I think you hit it right on the head. And the second point you made, I loved hearing that, because the ETs have said this. People will say, well, why don't you just come down and fix things? And they're like, no. You are in a much better position to do that. We can't do that. You have been given free will. It's against the laws of karma. They will use these exact words. All of us bear some culpability for the situation we are in right now. And all of us have much more power than we realize to end it. If everyone just stood up and said, that's enough, we're not playing this game anymore, you guys are out, which is, I understand, hard to do for the individual. But let's face it, countries rise and fall on the actions beginning with one person.
That's right.
And a movement starts very strongly. And we've seen this over and over again in human history, whether it's the civil rights movement or whatever. It just takes a few people to start taking real action. So it's time for exactly what you said. This is the ET agenda right there. Wake up. And this is why they're bringing people on board and helping them to develop their psychic ability. Because if we had intuition, if we had telepathy, just think how quickly we could get rid of all these corrupt world leaders.
Right. We got a real transparency problem and a real corruption problem. So imagine, if the psychic abilities come online,
it's done.
Life changes, no, but it's mind-boggling that we are where we are after the last 100 years. And, the technology they've been hiding, and they are crimes against humanity. There's no doubt in my mind. The wars that have been fought needlessly. I don't know. It's
because people's like, ETs are evil. Well, the ETs have basically told the contactees that no, it's your folks who are in power who are evil. Because lying isn't evil. If you choose to lie and deceive and hurt people, that's a choice of evil. So the problem here is on Earth. It's not with ETs coming here and trying to take over. No, We're not doing that at all. The ET agenda is
It's not
very
allowed. It's not allowed. You
no. I
can't, you
mean,
know,
if you look at
yeah.
the onboard UFO encounters, and you can really do this, don't believe me. There's a pattern that's very prominent of guiding, teaching, healing, warning, waking people up. They're letting people know that we are basically immortal beings. There is life after death. We are related to them. They consider
Hmm.
us, they're basically our ancestors, our
In a
progenitors.
very real way.
So they're looking upon us kind of just like their children, but really even more of equality. I think they really want us to be friends. This is the way contactees certainly look upon their ET contacts as friends or even family. They're very much bonded to them. So it's
Yeah.
up to us, really, to step up and do what we can to fix the problem because they're not going to do it.
Mm-mm.
It's up to us. There was a case I was just looking into of two teenagers, 16 and 18, on Lake Champlain. There was a whole book about it, the Buff Ledge Abduction by Walter Webb. And the kid asked him, he's 16 years old. He's like, why don't you come down? We're starving to death. And we need your help. And they said, no, we can't do that. The results would be much worse
Mm.
because we're not learning our lesson.
No, we're
We
not.
have to learn the lesson. Every
We really
parent
do.
knows that.
You know, and that's another thing that's very consistent, across the board is like part of your journey, part of your soul's journey and your species' true evolution is the reclamation of your sovereignty that you have, slowly but surely been manipulated into giving away. And more people are becoming aware of that, but they've done a great job of making us feel powerless, making us feel like, well, I'm only one person. What am I going to do? What are you going to do? Um, they've done a great, apathy is rampant, this general, like, well, I'm not even, and I get it. I understand it, like I feel like I never want to vote again. But at the same time, right now, if we want to see any changes in the system, the seems like the best thing we can do is try to overwhelm it in a way where we get the people who are dishonest out and then try and catch them when they try and cheat the electronic voting system, try to catch them cheating. We have this ability as a
I think
people.
that's why we're seeing a lot of non-politicians do really well in
Well,
politics
exactly.
because
Until
we're
they get in
paranoid.
and then they're swampified, Trump seemed to have promise, and at least his first 4 years seemed to have promise. And then, but you notice how everyone hated him the first 4 years, all the people who love him now. So like, obviously something happened because he no longer is, the Bushes and the Clintons are all like, he's a great guy, whereas they were like, this will be a nightmare if this man gets in. He was not playing ball with these corrupt criminal aspects, these families that have a long legacy of crime, syndication, global, like the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Clintons more recently, like they all hated Trump. And he seemed to be like somebody who they feared if he came to power would totally screw up their little structure that they had set up. And then something changed. Biden had his 4 years. Trump was allowed in, and then all the neocons, even Dick Cheney, they all shut up about Trump. So some script flipped at some point, clear in my mind, clearly, which should have been an indicator to those of us who were still believing the shit that he was saying on the campaign trail, like he was going to actually be able to do it. Just another politician, turns out, sadly, puppet.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he's not running the country.
No.
A president does have quite a bit of power, but compared to these other folks who are the ones who are truly running it, he's just a visitor. He comes in for a few years and leaves, and not in the loop. I think Bush Sr. was in the loop, head of the
Yep.
CIA, knew what was going on, was part of the problem. And I think throughout Congress there are what I would call plants, people who are there to watch and observe and are bad actors. Because I think there are good people in government. Of course there are.
Yeah.
There's good people in the military, most of them, I would say.
Yeah.
But we have a real problem on our hands.
We do. You got a great congressman like Thomas Massey, who has a wildly independent streak, cares passionately about regular American people. And they spent $35 million in the primary on a no-name nobody. It ran him as an opponent to Massey, and Massey was winning by about 10,000 votes until 3 a.m. when the, quote, mail-in ballots were counted, and that put him 10,000 behind. Where have we seen that before? That's interesting how that seems to happen.
Going back to, the whole subject of contactees who are getting this message and basically have come to a point where they're moving off grid. This is the message that, they learn to live without money, without being hooked up to the system, and get your own food and become a prepper, so to speak. It's amazing how many contactees are doing this. And I think our best tool to fight all this is honestly what we're doing right now, educating people, informing, because that's where you need to start. You need to have the knowledge of what's actually happening here, which is great because now that these congressional hearings are happening, which are still a complete dog and pony show,
right?
It's brought a lot of people into the fold, so to speak, into having interest in this subject. And they're listening to the government first, and I think they come pretty quickly to the knowledge that, oh my gosh, these guys are still lying to us. And this is when they start to do real research and realize, okay, they don't have the answers, they're lying. If you want the answers, go to the contactees. They're the ones who are direct. Everything we know about this UFO subject comes from the contactees. All of it that you can trust, certainly. So I think we're seeing... And
the nature of these beings.
It's a huge paradigm shift right now. People are going to start to really realize, okay, there are people out there who don't have a federalized system of government that enslaves the population.
Yeah.
That doesn't need money, has solved most of the problems with disease and poverty and crime and all of it.
Ask them about religion, they're like, what is that?
Yeah, there was...
Like, you worship a creator, they're like, worship a creator. We have a creator. But we don't worship
about it. Absolutely. Yeah. I have a contactee who's my favorite, Dolly Saffron. She's had enormous amounts of contact, and she's on board when people are taken on board and ask, of course, do you believe in God? And they will kind of tailor their answer to the level a person can understand it or their religious beliefs. But essentially, they do believe in what they call the all mind, that the universe itself is a conscious being. But there was Steve Boucher, another contactee who just passed away last year, sadly, but he asked them, what's the one true religion? And they told him none of them.
I could have told him that.
Well, I respect people. I would never gaslight someone just because they're religious. I think there are good people who are in religion and have strong faith, and I think Jesus was probably a really good guy.
No, absolutely. I'm a big fan.
A lovely message.
Yes.
But I don't know that organized religion is going to lead us to where we need to get. Because think of all the wars that have been fought over religion. How many people have lost their lives over religious conflict?
It's clear to me that religion will never be the solution. I think it's a poison pill. I believe that because the nature of humanity is, I think it's safe to say, positive as opposed to dominantly negative. So in general, you need something that appeals to people, to the goodness in people, but at the same time keeps them in check, keeps them in fear, keeps them afraid of death and afraid of, being irreverent towards these so-called rules that we're supposed to live by, because if you take away those things, the Romans figured this out. They were like, yo, if everyone believes they're just going to be born again, when we put the spear to them and tell them they owe us the tax money that we owe them, what are they going to, they'll say, well, maybe I'll pay you in the next life. They're not going to be afraid. We have a problem here. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just amazing to me when you research these
these religions, you see how each thing was added for such a specific reason, all of it for control. I think religion was the first government. It was a form of control, across the board, organized religion.
It's such a shame because it started out, I think, with good intentions, but that's the road to hell, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what they say, right? And they're not lying. I don't think that they're lying. I mean, I don't believe hell is a dimensional plane God created to send souls that use that free will gift he gave us, but also not quite as well as he hoped. So eternal suffering and damnation forever. I think that whole ball of wax is just the biggest joke ever told. And the fact that people subscribe to it is mind-boggling to me again. I mean, I tell people, I say this all the time.
One of the reasons we see ETs really pushing people towards sovereignty and using your own abilities. I got really interested in out-of-body experiences and astral projection because so many contactees report that. So I dug into it. I found Robert Monroe's book.
Yeah.
Who basically said, just do these exercises. You can do this.
The Gateway program.
Did them. And yeah, I never went to the Gateway program. I just used his book. I'm like,
well, cool.
You can do it. Why not? And ended up having a bunch of OBEs.
That's amazing.
Going
That's
to the other side. And my mom passed in '84, and I got to meet her. And since then, I've met my brothers, my father, my nephew, my friends.
That's amazing.
Who I've lost. And yeah, anyone can do this. I've written a book on it. And I can't
tell everyone the name of the book.
Out of Body Exploring, A Beginner's Approach.
Nice.
And yeah, I will send anyone who's listening to this a guide on how to do this. 2 pages, very simple. It's kind of compact though. You have to do these steps. But if you do, I can almost guarantee, well, I can't guarantee, obviously.
Right.
But if you persist on doing these steps, you will have success in astral projection.
Right.
And it's absolutely worth doing it because it's a natural human ability. It will wake up your psychic abilities. You can learn about your past lives. You can meet your deceased loved ones. You can have all kinds of amazing adventures from visiting.
You can meet some of the lives that are living simultaneously right now on other planets.
It's insane. And that it's mind-blowing to me that not everyone is doing this because that's how life-changing it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, just email me, prestonufo@gmail.com. I keep doing this and I get like 10, not 10 a day, but every day I get requests for this.
I'm gonna hit you with it too because I have the Gateway experience. I have the CD. I had the CDs. They're right here. On my new computer doesn't play CDs, but I have them all downloaded into my iTunes, and the work that they did there is just amazing. And if nothing else, even if a lot of people, it takes a certain amount of discipline to apply yourself long enough to have these experiences. And I think that, but even if you don't, your psychic intuition will come online the moment you start doing these exercises because immediately you begin to understand that you are not your body, and that this reality is really 0.00001% of that reality. And all this other information and planes and dimensions it's all there. And we have these incredible bodies which have the ability to tap into the multidimensional plane, and that's part of our, I think, hybridization, part of the races that came together to say, I got a crazy idea, Yeah. What if we put?
The way I look at it is, we call it astral projection. It's a little bit of a misnomer because we're essentially projecting down from the higher planes to the third dimension for a short period of time. That's our true home, and to reconnect with it is absolutely a life-changing experience, and it's something everyone should do because it removes the fear of death, which is really the guiding force in most people's lives. Let's face it, everyone's so darn scared of going outside or meeting strangers or doing anything that they're paralyzed with fear. And this comes into play when people meet ETs for the first time. Fear is such a huge problem with that. And learning astral projection opens doors in ways that I could not even, I cannot, how would I put it? I can't
can't really put into
endorse
words.
it enough.
Yeah. Oh, endorse it enough. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Doesn't it sound like fun to everybody who's listening? I mean, like, you've done it already. You may not have been conscious of it, but what Preston is talking about is learning and cultivating the ability to do it in a consciously, you know, whereas
This morning, it was amazing.
it's amazing, dude.
Because I've gotten pretty good at it, and
Wow.
everyone is doing this every single night.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they remember it or not, you pop out of your body and you're fully conscious. It's kind of like switching a channel. And so you switch the other channel and you forgot what you were just watching, because now you're back here on Earth. But you can absolutely do this, and the trick is remembering. That's really what's vital. It's a matter of applied knowledge, too. The only thing that's stopping people, there's, I think, 3 or 4 things. It's fear. It sounds scary to people, and it can be, especially at the beginning. But laziness, if you don't do the steps, it's not going to happen.
Discipline, yeah.
Skepticism, oh, I can't do it. This is yogis only. No, anyone can do this. And just plain ignorance. They have no idea that this is even a thing.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 things. And there's no real danger of being possessed or locked out or going too far up. You're doing this already every night. It's like ghosts. People are scared of ghosts. I've got news for you. The ghosts are around you all the time.
Yeah.
They're there right now. You might not see them, but once you elevate your abilities, you'll start to see them.
Yeah. And, you know, I always compare it to, like, you're watching a scary movie and all of a sudden the sound goes out and you're like, hey, it's not scary anymore. You know what I mean? Like, if you take away whatever was causing you to have this trepidation, this consternation, this fear, you can quickly see that there's nothing to be afraid of. You know, and when there is no energetic frequency being put out of fear, there's nothing that can return it. You know, like it's like almost like when you turn your face to the sun, well, the shadows naturally fall away. You know, and I try and encourage people to ask, because
if people could just overcome fear, their lives would be 100% better. Fear can be replaced with knowledge, because that's what people fear essentially, is the unknown. But if you can walk with love and knowledge and truth, there's no need to fear.
That's
and learning that there is life after death, that's a huge one. And there's no situation that you can't handle, because you've always come through it to the other side every single time. And if you don't, what's the worst that happened? You leave this body and you go to a much better place. And trust me, it's much better. It really is. So
that's right.
We need to stop worrying every day of our lives.
My God. People don't realize that they're missing out on life living that way. You know, it's like running a race with your shoes tied together. You'll never get full speed. You'll never get your stride if you're scared. If you think that somehow, you know, that you can do this thing called die, which is the one thing that really you can't do. No matter how hard you put your mind to it, you are going to go on to the next and the next and the next, you know, and what that next will be, I think, is a choice that you'll make with, you know, your guides and the people who are in your soul family, and what's the next best thing for you, and what you want to experience as far as where your soul is spiritually evolving. You know, I think that's, and I've talked to people who have had incredible NDEs, like Anita Morjani, and, you know, they all say the same thing. There was no pearly gates, you know.
You know, I'm not really a religious person, but when I found the near-death books, I'm like, okay, here's something I can sink my teeth into, because they're all saying the same things. That really the only thing we take with us is experience and love and wisdom and knowledge. And absolutely, I think if you want to have out-of-body experiences, one of the best ways to do it is start facing your fears. What's the one thing that scares you most, whether it's, you know, spiders or heights or clowns or whatever? Go run towards it and realize, like,
dissolve it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that will open doors for you in ways that I think are much greater than you would realize.
then people can imagine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, you've documented ETs collecting animals. We've talked about how, people have experiences where they're healed, like downloading musicians, also appearing to children on playgrounds. I think across 6 continents, you've documented that. Can you tell us about a couple cases that really kind of blew your mind and changed your perception about all these things?
Yeah. I've been in this field for like 4 decades now. And finding out about the schoolyard encounters was
Ooh.
absolutely something that changed my perspective on things. Because we've all, if you're in this field, you've probably heard of the Rua, Zimbabwe aerial elementary case, where in brief, a UFO, a couple of them, hovered next to the playground, basically landed. ETs came out, at least 60 plus students saw it. A smaller amount saw the ETs, but some communicated with them. An amazing case, very well verified. Turns out there was an adult or two who saw it as well. When I heard about that, I'm like, well, gosh, there's another case, the Westall High School case in Australia, where UFOs did land next to the playground. It's almost exactly the same, except it was a high school. And then I started thinking, didn't that happen in Broadhaven, Wales? I had to look that one up because I only had a vague memory of it. Same darn thing. And then I remembered there was one in Florida, Crestview Elementary School. Very well verified, lots of witnesses. Same darn thing. So I started digging deeper. I'm like, oh, it was the Hillsdale case in Michigan, Hillsdale College. UFOs actually landed next to the college. They were there for 2 hours. 80
Damn.
plus students saw it, faculty. The police saw it. So I started digging deep into these and I found a bunch of schoolyard cases. And this really changed the way I thought about what's going on here. Because when the Hillsdale case happened, this was March of 1966, Jim and Coral Lorenzen, my heroes, very early UFO researchers, said, you know what? We've had a lot of these schoolyard cases. We think there's something important going on here. Maybe they're getting ready to have open official contact. Maybe they're announcing their presence. There's something important here that we're not getting. And Raymond Fowler, another fantastic early researcher, said that this is, March of 1966. He said, so far this year, I've had 15 cases that I think are unexplained. 8 occurred over schools. Little did they know, 2 weeks later, Westall High School would occur. 1 year to the day after Westall, it was the Crestview Elementary School. So I dug deep. I found over 100 cases. It's now closer to 200 or 300. And what I found was amazing. Because these are, most people, when they see a UFO, it's an anomalous light at night, and it zips by and it's gone.
Right.
These are daylight sightings. And 1/2, that's a lot of all of these, statistically speaking, occur at elementary schools, primary schools. And these are very widely viewed sightings. 10, 20 people, but upwards of 40, 50, 100, some 400 kids and teachers. Teachers are seeing this in half the cases. It's not just kids. So for anyone who says, oh, well, they're kids, they're imaginative. No, teachers are seeing them too. And teachers are educated more than the average person, certainly.
Yeah.
And 1/3 of these cases involve landings or humanoids coming out. A UFO landing is a relatively rare thing.
Yeah.
Compared to a sighting. Daylight sightings are much rarer than nighttime sightings.
Right.
Everything about these schools is a little different, a little bit of an outlier. And they will put on a show. Smaller craft will come out. They'll dart around. They're doing what UFO researchers call a display.
Mm.
And so what I've come to realize is this is a publicity campaign, very much like a musician or a writer or what have you, goes across the country appearing in different cities. I actually pinned them all out and put a timeline on them. It's exactly like that. There was a case that Raymond Fowler investigated where it hovered over a high school, moved directly to the nearby college. It scared the wits out of everyone there.
Wow.
So, yeah, that one really shifted my thought on this. I remember one case at Point Elementary School in Missouri, where I was able to interview the witnesses firsthand. Melody Korn is her name. She and 6 friends decided that they weren't going to play Foursquare or kickball or whatever, where everyone else was,
Yeah.
the other side of the playground, and saw lights through the trees. Mind you, these are elementary age students. Their first thought was ice cream truck. So they look at each other and like, well, we're not supposed to go off school grounds, but they did. And they jumped. There was no fence. It was just, a border. So they run through the trees, and it's, of course, not an ice cream truck. It's a landed UFO. There's a little being standing next to it, which, not a gray, not a human looking. It's weird, the variation among beings. This was very...
How did they give a description of it?
Yeah, very... So it almost had a face like a gorilla.
Really?
Very muscular, wearing a tight jumpsuit. Just
always
different.
a jumpsuit. Which makes sense.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And they ran up to about 10 feet away from this thing in a row, and they're looking at this thing, and it sees them, and it's startled, and it's backing up slowly towards the craft, and is getting ready to go in, when suddenly there's a loud, piercing scream coming from behind the kids. It's the teacher, Mrs. Ollendorf, who sees this, grabs the kids, and says, "You're not supposed to be here. What are you doing?" And ushers them back inside. Well, of course, this causes everyone on the playground to lose their mind, because they can see the lights now. They didn't see the being. Only the 6 kids did, and the teacher. But she rushes everyone, playgrounds cut short. They all go into the classroom. It's a pretty small school. There's different classrooms, of course, but they go in Mrs. Ollendorf's classroom where Melody was. All the kids come rushing to the window and are looking at the UFO, and she's furiously shutting the blinds and calling the principal, and he comes rushing in, and they end up ushering everyone into the auditorium where everyone can fit, and has only windows at the very high part. And sure enough, someone shouts out, "There it goes!" They cut school short for the day.
Sure they did.
They called the buses.
I want to know what they said when they called the parents. Yeah. Well, how do you want me to say this?
Yeah, it was the talk of the school for months. Kids were forbidden to speak about it, but of course they did anyway. And that's just one of so many cases. It's crazy to think that this is going on, and I think it's a very effective method by the ETs to sort of slip under the radar there, because this was not really recognized by researchers in a way that it was studied and, put out to the public. But
but it seems methodical, right? It seems like they're choosing these schools. We know that they have. I mean, I say we. Many of us who have researched this have an understanding that they certainly have the ability to tune into the consciousness of the human being that is in proximity to them. How vast that ability goes and to what extent, I don't know if we can say, but I think that they have a sense of the consciousness of the being, and probably they can tell the age because of the level of consciousness. So, because it seemed obvious that they're going to students, young people, and it doesn't seem like it was just random or an accident. Sure, some recesses have yards, but you can find yards anywhere, if you need a place to land and get out and take a walk, I mean, but you said that they were surprised when they saw the kids, that they were startled. The kids were probably startled. And I always feel like what is the purpose, I guess, because I would imagine that the purpose is to inspire wonder and to connect with these young humans in a way that gives them a chance when they grow up to be more open-minded about these things, possibly, continue to develop telepathic and psychic abilities so that they can communicate, so that we can work together to try to reclaim our sovereignty and make this race into what it was always supposed to be. What are your thoughts on the reasons for them choosing those places?
Yeah, well, I think absolutely what you said, it is intentional. This is not like a random flyover, because the kids are out at school and they on the playground and
it's at the time of recess, right?
Yeah. And not only that, they'll come from the horizon or wherever they're coming from and stop over the school. And these are very low-level sightings too. And it's not a coincidence, is what I'm saying. And I think they're very clever in doing this because are kids good witnesses? There's an argument about that. I'm going to say yes, they're excellent witnesses because one, they are very adept at learning. They're adept at learning. They can soak up details in a way that an adult can't. And generally speaking, they don't have prejudices and an overlaid belief system where they're going to call this an angel or a demon or what have you. Because a lot of them have never even heard of UFOs or ETs. These are real young kids. So they make excellent witnesses in that they just describe the color and the shape and the series of events. Not one of them has ever retracted. Some of these schools hold anniversary meetings from all the kids. They come back and talk about this because that's how profoundly it affects them. Some become quantum physicists, like teachers, UFO activists, researchers. Malcolm Robinson, Scotland's probably one of the most prominent researchers there, had this encounter on a schoolyard as a kid.
Wow.
So yes, this does have a huge effect, and I think the ETs knew precisely what they were doing, because certainly during the time this started, which was the early 1950s, there was a sort of attitude of kids should be seen and not heard. Kids would come home and say, I saw this, and they're like, yeah, that's right, honey, aren't you cute? You have an imagination. No, these youngsters grew up, of course, to be adults, in some cases, very influential people. And
amazing.
It was a very effective method to introduce all humanity to the idea that we're not alone. And it's funny, I started looking for other similar cases. I'm like, well, what about sporting events? Because they're outside. I found a number of them, not 100, 20.
Wow.
I started looking at concerts. 10, 20, not 100 or 200 or 300. So it seemed to be unique. And then I hit upon one. I'm like, oh my God, this is another thing that slid under everybody's radar. Drive-in movie theaters.
Oh, yeah.
I ended up putting a book about this, UFOs at the drive-in. Because I ran into my first case as a young investigator. I was at the office at work, and anytime we had a new employee, they'd march them up to my desk, like, Preston loves UFOs. If you've seen a UFO, he wants to know. And Claudia, our new employee, is like, oh, I saw one. We were at the drive-in theater in Paramount, and told this amazing story where a UFO hovered right next to the screen and cleared the theater because people were so freaked out. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's a one-off. I've never heard that before. And over the years, I'd occasionally hear a case never as good as that.
Right. Then drive-ins also kind of went away,
Yeah, that's true. But I wrote UFOs over Colorado, and I ran into 3 cases in a row. The Mile High Theater, they were watching Dr. Zhivago. This UFO comes down, it's flashing lights at people. They're flashing their headlights back at it.
Right.
And then another one, and then another one. I'm like, this is a thing. I think this might be a thing. And I read all my books. You might be able to see the bookcase behind me. I've got a lot of books.
Yes.
And a room filled with magazines and journals and newspaper clippings. There were none in the books. I found one case, and Somewhere in the Skies. I always forget his name. At any rate, it's a great book. Somewhere in the Skies. There was
sounds familiar.
Case. There.
I think I have one of the other books of the guy who wrote it. I can't remember his name either.
I love the guy. He's a great researcher.
He's got a bunch of books, right?
Not a bunch, but I know he's
3
got
or 4.
No,
yeah, I know maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
I know he's got one, but at any rate, I started checking the newspaper clippings, and that's when I hit pay dirt, because man, oh man, the absolute treasure trove. Ryan Sprague, that's his name.
Oh, Ryan Sprague. Okay, no, I was thinking of someone different.
Yeah, great guy. But I found a bunch of cases, so I started digging into like MUFON database, Mutual UFO Network, and QFOS, and APRO, and NICAP. There's a lot of information if you know where to look for it. And found over 100 cases. And every single one of these cases, it was exactly the same. These craft would come flying along, and they drop down right over the screen, or right to either side.
Wow.
And in a few cases, by the side of the actual parking lot. And they would flash their lights, and they would dart around and circle the whole lot, and they would release smaller craft. And it was this obvious display, very low level, long lasting, and in your face in a way that this is clearly not someone who's outside at night and a light goes by and keeps on going. No, they were targeted. Very obviously targeted. And it's the same darn thing as these schoolyard counters. It's a way to announce their presence to a group of people in a way that will convince them forever UFOs are real. And I think
inspire wonder and curiosity and open-mindedness, and like, you know, especially in people who are, before they become jadedly cynical and, you know, materialist, and the world has got their grips on their belief systems. You know, it's at a time when clearly it's, you know, methodically at a certain time in these kids' lives. It's amazing. And again, like, so what do you say? It reminds me of the earlier part of our conversation where people are like, "Oh, all ETs are demons." I'm like, what would demons be doing shutting down nukes? You know what I mean? Like, we have hundreds and hundreds of reports, documented reports of UFOs shutting down both weapons, facilities, you name it. You know, they're just like they arrive and they're like, yeah, we're going to turn everything off just to show you we can. Maybe just make sure that we can. Okay, there you go. You know, and of course, the United States government is like, well, this is a problem. This is a real problem. We can't have anyone able to shut off our weapons of mass destruction. But like, you know, what's demonic about that? I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder what their argument
to
that
might be. They have an answer for it. They'll say they do this to earn your trust. Like, there's 300 healing cases. I'm like, well, it's more than really. And then what about because there's a good 50 of them where people have had their lives saved from car accidents, falls, weather events, drowning. I mean, you name. There was one lady who was about to be assaulted by this okay guy who, you know, clearly had bad intentions, when this UFO comes dropping down right over both of them. And he looks at her and goes, "Oh my God, I think we better get out of here." Well, she runs towards the UFO.
Right.
He runs away. She's like, "That thing saved my life. That guy was about to do bad things to her."
Wow.
And I've got a bunch of cases of that. I started collecting them because I'm like, wow, why isn't anyone talking about this? This is insane.
Are you allowed to talk about some of your celebrity contact encounters that you have in your files? And do you think that they go out of their way to kind of maybe become, you know, present to these people who are of this status, this celebrity status?
I do. Yeah. I can't talk, you know, I've every now and then run across a celebrity who's, you know, either reached out to me or is part of a contact that were involved with the other person. That's more often someone has a group contact. I mean, there was one on Catalina Island where there were 12 people, and 2 of them are mega famous. I mean, you would know their names. Wow. One's like a huge sitcom star, and one's a huge movie star. Huge. And no, they won't talk to me. It's a risk to their career, and I totally respect that. But I know who they are. And there's been a number of cases like that, and a bunch of people, celebrities, are now coming forth. There's well over, I think, 150 now. And I think ETs are certainly contacting everybody from every level of society.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they show any prejudice or discrimination in that regard.
Right.
But I am not going to say that for sure, because I did a whole kind of statistical study of who's being contacted and why. Why this person and not this person? And I found this really interesting pattern that people who, particularly in the healings, but it really applies to anyone who's having contact, are people who are doing good work for humanity, or who are the movers and the shakers. So we see doctors and nurses, we see police officers, entertainers, musicians. They love musicians, celebrities, environmentalists, inventors. You get the idea. Social workers and so forth. And celebrities fall under that category because, for whatever reason, people love celebrities.
Yeah.
And, you know, when they started finding out celebrities are influential, of course, commercials, advertisers picked up on that. Remember Joe DiMaggio?
Oh yeah.
Commercial that kind of quadrupled or quintupled
Didn't
sales
take them
of
long to
the
realize there
razor.
was a lot of money to be made by putting
So I think,
someone.
yeah,
Yeah.
celebrities recognized that and said, you know what? Let's contact these folks. They have a platform that
Mm.
is above and beyond, like John Lennon.
Yeah.
Major contactee, it turns out. He didn't completely come
Wow.
forward.
I
But
didn't
according,
know that, but that makes a lot of sense with the
yeah,
wisdom that he came into.
he had a huge sighting. He was one of like a dozen or 20 people calling the police. And according to, that psychic, Uri Geller, John Lennon told him that he had a little gray guy come into his room. And from what I understand, there's more rumors surfacing that it's gossip, it's hearsay, because he didn't say it himself in a public way. So I can't really endorse it. I try to be very objective about this.
Right. Right.
Apparently, he was a contactee
Wow.
and spoke about it and even wrote about it in his song, Strange Days Indeed, where he said, there's UFOs over New York and I ain't too surprised. Uh, uh,
You know,
so,
what fascinates me is you look at some of the people who've had and come into the greatest influence in each of their communities, some of them much wider than others, but each of them significantly impacting people's lives in a way that either just improves their understanding of reality and therefore their quality of life and their ability to be happy and healthy on this planet, and or a revelation of knowledge, important knowledge. Someone like William Cooper, who, ended up in the Navy and, was trained as a lookout, so that person is trained so that they don't fire on the wrong ship. This is a job that is very serious.
observer, yeah.
Yeah. A trained observer. That's right. And found himself looking out, part of the ship he was on, and this massive UFO was coming up out of the water and just going into space. And he was like, and then it happened again and again. And he was like, no, why did this have to happen on my watch? I got to be the one to go in, and he looked over at the person who was in charge and he was like, you want to be the one, but that was kind of the catalyst for he recalls after that being in a bar a few years before that with a bunch of guys who were drunk and claimed to be on a UFO crash retrieval team. And he was like, I just thought they were trying to get girls, like they were just trying to show off and tell these fake stories so the girls would be interested in them. He was like, if I could go back in time, I would have talked to them. I would have found out more because I know that they were real and these programs are real. But that kind of, I think that was kind of part of the seed that ended up turning him into who he became after he left the military and putting out all this information that people should be aware of. And, and you can, people like Daryl Anka, who as a teenager, had this close encounter with a UFO. This UFO flew right over the convertible he was driving in, and he would see that UFO. Dr. Stephen Greer, from a young age, he had a contact experience. He saw a ship, and these people grew up to contribute to the world in a way that is almost immeasurable and profound. And I just think it's so cool how somehow or other, and either they're rolling the dice or they have a sense of, we can plant a seed here that will grow fruit, in this person's life and in this world 30 years later, 20 years later, 40 years later, just by letting their presence be known. And I think that's so amazing and inspiring and gives me hope that, we'll find a way out of the mess that we're in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Again, hit it right on the head. I love this because just a simple sighting changes everything, completely destroy your belief system. There's a huge paradigm shift. You're considering new ideas. I think this is one of the reasons we see high strangeness in encounters, because it really forces people to consider completely new ideas and think outside of the box. And after I started doing UFO research, I started to have some of my own encounters. And I started looking back into my own past. I'm like, well, gosh, there was that one incident of missing time when I was a kid. my brother saw a UFO. He ended up with an implant. My
Wow.
sister had missing time. It took her a while to tell me. It took her a while to remember it. And my two nephews have had encounters. Two
Wow.
sister-in-laws saw ETs face to face.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh my God, it's in my family. I'm one of these
It
families,
does tend to be in families. That is another statistically,
right?
empirically measured phenomenon that I've heard,
100%.
people in these programs speak about. That's not that it literally can run in families. I'm pretty sure that that's a thing,
Absolutely. I think that was very much cemented into the, we figured that out early,
Yeah.
thanks to Bud Hopkins and his second book. I think was it Intruders. Really like, okay, this is what we found out, and I think all the researchers will agree upon that. And it's funny because when I started having encounters, I'm like, well, what about other UFO researchers? Is
Yeah.
this? And I found this book about Whitley Strieber, written by Ed Conroy, the Report on Communion. Because Ed Conroy was a mainstream journalist who set out
Yeah.
to either expose Whitley as a fraud or prove his case. And of course, proved his case and ended up having encounters himself and coined this term called UFO investigator's disease. Oh my God, I think I've caught it. And I started, buddying up to some of, as a researcher, you start to really meet a lot of other researchers.
Mhm.
And I would ask them, I'm like, have you had encounters? Almost all of them have. Not all of them are going public.
Right.
But pretty much, if you're a heavy duty researcher of any influence, I can almost guarantee that you have had an encounter as a child.
Yeah.
So there's something to that for sure.
What you seek is seeking you. I'm a big believer that Rumi got that right. I used to live in Manhattan for 20 years. I lived in Manhattan, but by 2018, I had become much more spiritually awake. I had started daily meditation practices, and I was getting my mental and emotional and physical health, where it, in a good place compared to where it was a few years earlier and the struggles I had been going through. But, I learned about CE5 protocols, which for everyone listening who may not have heard that yet, it's just close encounters of the fifth kind, which means human initiated contact through consciousness, through heart coherent, mindful consciousness, and also a bit of remote viewing and showing them where you are, like on the planet, so that they have a chance to kind of tune into where you are, and if they can and it's safe, they may just give you a flyby, right? But I was living in Manhattan, probably one of the most heavily radared and worst, light
Densely
pollution,
populated.
densely populated. But I'm like, I'm not going to let that stop me. I would go up on the roof of my Manhattan apartment building and sit and meditate, and I would even keep a headlamp on. And I had this incredible experience once. I don't think, like, I understood that it was not when I was deep into this meditation, and it was like it was just black, and then out of this blackness I almost fell out of my seat because this ship came up, but my eyes weren't open, but I could see the ship, and it startled me, like out of the void of meditation, and the message I got was, hello, this is the best we can do for for where you are, but it was an amazing experience, and I didn't imagine it. I was literally imagining nothing, and then all of a sudden I almost fell off my chair when I got, because I was trying to remote view this ship, but it's just
Cool.
the interaction, that the potential for interaction is there for everyone. It doesn't need to be something that you believe in or don't believe in. If you are willing to, try, I mean, your beliefs are going to affect, but if you can keep an open mind just long enough to wonder why that thing you're seeing in the sky is there, and then they respond, like you could be like, so many times I it's either I've seen tapes and I've experienced it myself, you know, like they're going away and people are like fearlessly like, don't go. And they come back, you know, they come back.
Yep.
Like, that's how you know it's not a man-made replica. That's how you know you're dealing with a true ET craft, because they're tuned into and connected to your consciousness. Whereas the Northrop Grumman ones aren't, you know?
Yeah, I had an experience where I was doing CE5 because I was part of the early CSETI group in LA. I was a
Cool.
charter member, actually. And so a couple of years into it, it was my turn to lead the meditation. I'm more of a wallflower. You know, I'm on the side. I don't want any attention. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing any of this. But yeah, we had a small group of, I don't know, 6 people. And I led the meditation, and all our eyes were closed, and kept getting this message: look up, look up, look up, look up. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm meditating. And finally, I just had to look up. It was a compulsion. And as soon as I did, this tiny pinprick of light appeared, and it grew to this massive, this could not have been a shooting star. There's just no way.
Wow.
It covered almost, I hate to say it, but a third of the sky. Because it sounds ridiculous. And it winked out. But later I found out 1 mile away at that exact time, because this was in Topanga Canyon, and I had a very active network there. I investigated a huge wave of sightings that was occurring during this time, and found a couple who was driving 1 mile away along Topanga Canyon Boulevard and had a major encounter with this metallic craft, which turned on its side, flashed its lights at them, followed them a little bit, and this was the same time 1 mile away.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't see that. But I think what I saw was it either coming in or going out. I would say coming in probably, but I don't know. But yeah, I'll never forget that feeling of just look up, look up, look up, look up, look up, look up.
Wow, that's awesome. It's so many stories like that, man. And people, I wish more people could be exposed to and realize what they're missing. But so, just kind of wrapping things up, you know, you've spent 30 years documenting. I don't want the darker version of this story, the cover up, the ridicule that these people experience, the suppression, the fact that they're afraid to even speak out about it. We probably have millions of people out there who had an experience who they're not going to tell anyone.
Most
you know, but the message that they're getting isn't dark. You know, my question in closing to you is, what happens to humanity if we finally listen to that message?
Well, I'm an optimist by nature. So I think that whatever happens, we're going to be okay. But it's clear to me from the messages given to people that we're facing a pretty rough future. So no matter what, we're in for it. But if everyone actually listened, and I think contact is far more common. So we're looking at maybe 1 in 40, 1 in 50 people. That's a lot. And I think it's the perfect amount because every person is pretty much in contact with that amount of people. So by contacting 140 people, that is enough to spread their message to every single human on Earth. And if we all just got that message, which is very simple, you know, don't pollute, be kind to each other.
Stop killing everything.
Stop chopping down the forests and polluting the air and killing each other. Exactly.
Dismantle the bombs.
Wake up your psychic abilities. It would be an absolute game changer. All bets are off. There would be a collapse of government is, face it, something that's only something that immature people need. We don't need laws. The only reason we have laws is because people are immature, unethical, immoral. Because if people weren't killing each other and stealing and so forth, we wouldn't need that. We don't need that. We got along just fine for centuries. Governments certainly existed, but their reach was nothing like we have today. We have a license for everything.
I mean,
fishing,
you can't even build something in your own backyard without a permit or a license. I mean, it's just the overreach is unbearable. It's absurd.
It's crazy. So yeah, I think there would be a massive shift And really, it could be so easily done if everyone just, like you said, claimed their sovereignty,
Yeah.
their autonomy. That's a word I hear from a lot of contactees, from the
Autonomy.
ETs. You
Yeah.
are an autonomous being with all
Sentient
the power
being.
of the universe within you. It's up to you to affect change. So, yeah, I think it would be fantastic, and we would have peace on Earth for the first time in human history.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
There's no reason we can't do it. There's no reason at all. It's up to us.
That's right. So stop waiting around for the second and third and fourth coming. That's what I say to everyone who is listening. You know, it's on us. You know, it's on us. Like, so anytime you want to stop cheerleading and start contributing to the conversation, it's never too late. You're never too young or too old to care about the future of our species and our planet. You know, so you have a voice. You know, God gave you a voice, 2 legs. You can get to where you need to go and say what you need to say in 1,001 ways now today with technology, more than ever before. So, you know, I think this podcast is a call as much as it is a conversation, but I've enjoyed it immensely. Preston, tell everyone where they can buy your books, find you if you have a social media, you know, and all that jazz.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, certainly. I feel like this is such an important subject because, like we were just saying, it could change the world. But you can find me all over social media pretty easily by just punching in my name. I do have a YouTube channel, which is growing pretty fast. I'm very
I forgot to
honored.
tell everyone about your YouTube. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
He has an awesome YouTube channel, everyone. He has a series where you know, like you can give him your hometown and he can find like an alien encounter and the history of it. You got to check out his YouTube. I meant to mention it. I'm sorry, Preston.
No worries. I have a website, prestondennett.weebly.com. I'm most of the, well, I won't say most because there's so many social media platforms, but on a good number of them. And you can find my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other online retailers, bookstores, and if they're not there, you can always order them. And yeah, I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this subject. It's a new era for humanity. This subject is going mainstream after 4 decades of battling against a brick wall. I'm glad to see it's crumbling down a little bit.
Yeah.
Still got a long way to go, but shows like yours that really help. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And when work like yours is immeasurable. And so thank you for your time and for this conversation. I hope I didn't talk too much. I get excited when we talk about these issues because I know how impactful they could be if people realized the importance of them. But you know, I'm grateful for your time and for your work, and we'll have to do it again. Let's see what happens. You know, at the end of throughout this year, we'll see where the government ends up and what they end up disclosing, and where they're going to go with this. Let's revisit. Let's have another conversation sometime soon, though. That'd be awesome.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And for everyone listening on iTunes and Spotify, if you enjoy the podcast, drop a comment, drop 5 stars. We're trying to build those reviews. We need your help. You know, we're usually talking about things that are not algorithmically friendly, let's say. And so we're trying to grow our audience. And if you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And with that, Preston, we'll be in touch when this is going to come out. We'll coordinate the release and all that. Awesome. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.